Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the GOAZCATS.com football preview show. We're back again. This is Matt Moreno with Troy Hutchison from GOAZCATS.com. Arizona. We weren't sure what we were going to be talking about this week after, that San Diego State game. I know we both picked Arizona to beat Mississippi State, but not a huge shock. I think that Mississippi State came away with the win in that game. Maybe the way they came away with that win was a little bit surprising. Arizona didn't look very much like the team that we saw against San Diego State. This week, another challenging opponent, even though some people might not think so. I think a lot of people think, why are you scheduling this game? Why is North Dakota State even on the, schedule for week 3 for Arizona? But before we get to this week's game, let's maybe take a look back at last week against Mississippi State. What stood out to you about that game for Arizona? And what do you think went wrong for the Wildcats, Troy, in that game that, caused them to lose?
Yeah, number one, I think it's kind of ties in together. Quarterback play with Jayden de Laura. He had 3 picks, 2 of which were kind of forced plays where he just threw the ball up there for grabs and it got picked off, and you just can't do that. But leading into that is the poor offensive line play. Arizona only averaged, I think, 2.1 yards a carry. They had 40 yards on 20 attempts. And then to follow that up, Jayden de Laura, every time he hiked the ball, he was under pressure. Also some bad snaps as well. So there's just a lot of offensive mishaps and just not really good timing, and it caused Arizona to struggle on the offensive end. Number 2, a little bit of a positive here. I really liked what Arizona's defense did against Mississippi State. I know in the grand scheme of things, they gave up 39 points, but it was a 25-17 ball game midway through the 4th quarter. And to be honest, they played a great defensive game. They just wore down from being out there on the field too long and their offense not scoring touchdowns. So overall, a very good job defensively. And then number 3, just a lot of drop catches. And, it's not only Cowan, you had T-Mac dropping some passes, very uncharacteristic from those guys, and just kind of a shocking game.
I mean, one thing that stood out to me, and I don't know, maybe I'm just overthinking it, looking into it too much, but it was almost Arizona overthought the game. I think maybe they were preparing, okay, this is a big SEC team. We have to be ready. We have to be, super sharp, and that's the message. And you're obviously trying to prove yourself, as a team and as a conference that you can take on a team like that and have success. And it wasn't that Mississippi State wasn't good. I think they were good. And I mentioned that, on last week's show, that I thought they were better than what, Arizona fans were giving them, credit for. But it almost felt like Arizona overthought it a little bit, and because they were right in that game. I think it was an evenly matched opponent. I don't think Arizona is as bad as the team as they looked, last week. I think they're better than what they showed against Mississippi State. If you're a Mississippi State fan tuning into that game, you're going, oh, this team is like terrible. And, how did they even give San Diego State a game, let alone beat them? So I don't know. I just thought it felt like there was maybe Arizona a little bit too much in its own head. And then by the time you realize we're kind of on an even plane with this team, it was a little bit too late. And Mississippi State really didn't have any issues kind of doing what it wanted to do. I think it showed why it's an SEC team, why that conference is thought of so highly, why the players there are just different. There's just a lot more, a lot more size, probably some more talent across the board, maybe more depth in terms of talent across the board. But I don't think it was one of those games where Arizona was completely overmatched. I mean, they were very much in that game. Jedd Fisch talked about that this week, that, with the crowd there and, the support they're getting and the enthusiasm in the game and the crowd, that they felt like they were in that game. And when it got a little bit close, they're like, oh, this is, legitimate chance to win this game. And it never felt like Arizona was truly, truly out of it, but it also never felt like they were ever in control or ever a threat to win that game. So that's not where you want to be. You want to be kind of one or the other. If you're going to lose kind of in a fashion where it's like leaves no doubt. So I don't know. I thought Arizona was maybe in its own head a little bit. There was some kind of, and again, we don't know if they're uncharacteristic plays because we just haven't seen Jayden de Laura consistently over the course of a season, but it felt like just throws that you could see him throwing the pass and going, why am I making this throw? A couple times where it's just like, and it ended up in an interception where it's like, you can see it telegraphed. You go, don't make that throw. Don't make that throw. He's probably telling himself that same thing and then just makes a throw and, lands in with 3 interceptions. So, I think obviously he needs to be cleaner, with the ball, and they need to play a cleaner game. I think that was the kind of overarching thing for me was you just can't have mistakes. Mm-hmm. You can't play a team like this and have mistakes. And I thought Arizona kind of shot itself in the foot a few times. And once you do that, it's going to make it difficult to win a game like this. So that was one of the things that stood out. overall with Jayden de Laura, what did you think of his performance? Did you think it's one of those things where he's going to get over it? He's been pretty good at getting over things from what we've seen so far through 2 games this season. Obviously, Noah Fafita came in the game, and I know on our YouTube page, I believe, or somewhere there, maybe Twitter, there is people talking about, hey, that guy that came in at the end should have just played the whole game because he did a lot better. Obviously, it's so different. You're coming in at the end of the game's pretty much out of hand. He doesn't have the experience of someone like Jayden de Laura. There is no quarterback controversy. I mean, there just isn't. But, what did you think overall of Jayden de Laura's performance and what he showed? And do you think there's something to, build on from that?
Yeah, I think one thing is that he showed he's able to avoid pressure. Like I said, they're in his face the whole entire game, and a lot of those throws came under pressure. Maybe you just run 5 yards upfield and then go out of bounds, learn to fight another day, I think is the biggest takeaway for Jayden de Laura there. But overall, I mean, it wasn't bad. He was still in the game at the end. And you wonder how that game was going, but they were in it till the end, and then it just finally pulled away. But the number 2 takeaway is he's got to learn how to run. There was a play, I think it was like 3rd and 8. Arizona was down by like 14 points, and he rolls out of the pocket, and it is clear grass for the next 20 yards. The crowd goes crazy. They're cheering like, oh my God, he's going to go score a touchdown on this play. And I think he forced the issue and threw a pass, and it was incomplete. But he could have easily ran upfield for 15 yards on that play, got in the first down, and who knows, they score a touchdown there. Who knows what happens?
Yeah, that was kind of probably, I think, the main thing that a lot of people took away from that game. Anytime you have a coach ask the question and he just kind of goes, yeah, took care of it. Or whatever Jedd Fisch was saying when talking about, yeah, we discussed it, and kind of leaving it at that, it irks the coach as well. And so, I mean, I think there is clear kind of message there from Jedd Fisch this week when he was asked, and even after the game when he was asked about Jayden de Laura not running, where it was like, oh yeah, we discussed it. And he was very short in those answers, which tells me a lot, actually, in those answers, that he was very disappointed or angry that Jayden de Laura didn't take more of those opportunities to run the ball. I can't blame quarterbacks who don't want to run the ball when they see openings. We've seen a lot of injuries. We've seen a lot of careers cut short, careers come to an end. When quarterbacks take off on the run, they're very susceptible to, taking those big hits and big shots. And, one of those things where it's just like, I understand it. I get it. But you have to take those opportunities. If you're just trying to win games, you're coming off a 1-win season. On many of those occasions, it didn't look like there was that big opportunity for that big hit. They were pretty wide open. It was pretty wide open field in front of him where he could just slide. Again, we haven't seen him do too much because in the offseason, you're not hitting the quarterback. You're not hitting the projected starter. So you don't get to see them in live situations very often. So we don't know what his sliding capabilities are. We all remember what happened to Khalil Tate. And when he took some big hits and he was, hesitant to run, when he had to run and slide, he kind of forgot how to do it. There are some moments where you watch him slide and you're like, what was that? And you're almost like, he looks like he's almost going to hurt himself because he doesn't know how to slide. So we don't know what the case is with Jayden de Laura. Obviously, he was in a pass-heavy system at Washington State. They're in a pro-style scheme now at Arizona. I mean, maybe he just doesn't know how to slide. Who knows? But you have to take those opportunities because those were, chances to keep the offense moving. And I felt like there's moments, I think we all saw that there's moments where, if he picks up 8 or 9 yards, it moves the chains, they keep the drive going. Maybe it's a different game. And you hate to put it just on one player, just on one aspect of the game, because I think there's more than that, cost them a loss, or cost them a win. But it's hard to overlook those opportunities that he had to run the ball and how different things could have looked if he would have just taken those chances. So that's going to be something to really pay attention to this week. Maybe one of the things to watch is he going to take those opportunities to run the ball if he has those chances? A much different looking defense, more traditional look on both sides of the ball for North Dakota State. But that'll be one interesting thing to look at. Defense. Oh, go ahead.
And you kind of have to wonder, has it been kind of coached out of him? They've talked about, playing within the system so much during the off season and just knowing how to make the right reads and being within the scheme and not kind of improvising like you did at Washington State. By the time you got to Mississippi State, you had improvisable plays, and he didn't take those opportunities that he might have in the past. And Jedd talked about, we talked to him, but there has to be that, hey, maybe it's a little bit on the coaching staff as well in terms of this is what you coached them to do.
I think that all goes into just early season struggles, early season hurdles that you're trying to get over. Getting some of that rust off from a long off season. I think that kind of all goes into that, those things will get better. I would assume as the season moves along, but yeah, I mean, it'll be very interesting to see kind of how that all plays out this week. Defensively, is anything standing out to you so far through 2 games under Johnny Nansen? Obviously, a couple different schemes that he's had to go up against. Seems like there's progress, and it's almost like continued progress from the Don Brown era, the short-lived Don Brown era of one season. But they made a lot of progress last year, by the end of the year, and feels like they've kind of continued that. Obviously, a different system, some different things they're trying to do. But I think one of the things that stands out to me is that they're continuing to hit on all those key points that they talked about throughout the offseason, creating turnovers, limiting big plays. They seem to be doing that and making progress there. And that's a good sign, I think. What about you, Troy?
Yeah, 5 turnovers already this season. Last year, they had 6 for the whole entire year. I think they've had one play of 20 yards or more. Underneath Don Brown's system, it felt like they had 15 a game. It happened quite frequently. So you just seen progress there. But specifically, let's talk about Jackson Turner. He's kind of become this ball hawking safety. Kind of reminds me of Tremaine Bondurant back in the Rich Rod era. It seemed like he was always around the ball, just making plays. And oddly enough, he wears 21. Jackson Turner wears 21. Very similar player in terms of they might not be the most athletic best player out there on the field, but they're always around the ball, making plays, creating turnovers, and giving their defenses opportunities to turn the game.
I know we're not supposed to root for players, but I feel like, I like to root for Jackson Turner. I've covered him since he was in high school. He was really, trying to figure out his way. Everyone kind of said, hey, have you seen him play football? Because I watched a lot of him play basketball. I know that's it feels like his true passion is playing basketball, but this wasn't in the cards for him to do both. But everyone always kind of said, like, if you think he's like pretty decent as a basketball player, you should see him on the football field. And I talked to someone who knew him as a basketball player recently, and they said, how's he going to look this season? And I was like, well, if he plays well, he might have an outside shot at, making this his future and becoming a pro eventually. And he's kind of backed that up. It's kind of the time for him to make that move and to make that next step in his development. He's obviously been a starter for a while. He's made some big plays at times, but he's taken it to a new level. At this point, there's no bigger beneficiary of this system than him. I mean, he's been the one, and he's kind of just fallen in the right place at the right time. And, we saw that with Traden Stukes as well. Getting that interception, it kind of looked very similar to the one that Jackson Turner got in that first game against San Diego State, where you're just kind of in the right spot at the right time, which is really what the system is built for. But Jackson Turner is taking full advantage of kind of being in the right place at the right time, but also making those plays. And that's big. And so, it's nice to see someone like that who's kind of, Jalen Harris as well. That's another guy I think of when you go, it's nice to see them having success and playing well. For their sake, hopefully Arizona getting some wins, because those guys have really been through the battles. They've been through the real depths of this program and really have been through some real struggles that they could have left. They've had opportunities. Christian Roland Wallace as well could have left. I mean, there's a lot of teams that I'm sure would like to have Christian Roland Wallace on their team right now. Maybe even a team out in Los Angeles. So it's nice to see some of those guys, really have success. But Jackson Turner has really been kind of, to me, the biggest beneficiary of this change in scheme system going over to Johnny Nansen. It's been really, cool to see, and we'll see what kind of continues for him. But if he's able to keep this pace up, he's going to be in that conversation for, best player on the team and potentially, pro prospect. So as we move forward, let's maybe start talking a little bit more about this North Dakota State game. It feels like we've talked about them a lot, but it's all, it's all due. it's all right to talk about them and how much success they've had. 9 championships in the last 11 seasons. Jedd Fisch mentioned they only lost 9 games in like the course of like 150 games. Defending FCS champion, #1 team in the FCS, have a track record of beating not only FBS teams, but Power 5 teams. Their last game against a Power 5 team was against a ranked opponent, Iowa, in 2016. Won that game. It basically is telling you this is going to be a disaster for Arizona. But they have to play the game. It's one of those games. I know a lot of fans are saying, if there's a way to get out of it, can you get out of it? Because it just was one of those games where it's like you're coming off a 1-win season. You lost to an FCS team last year that is nowhere near as good as North Dakota State. When you kind of evaluate what they've done, and obviously we don't pay attention to them as much as we pay attention to Power 5 schools. It's just not what we do, but you have no choice but to pay attention to what they're doing when you hear about them so much. What stands out to you about what they've done, or what has maybe the coaching staff and the players talked about this week that stands out to you about what they've done that really has led to this success?
Yeah, I mean, they know exactly who they are. You know what I mean? It's kind of going to the Bill Belichick theme of do your job, know your role. And that's North Dakota State football. They run the power I, they run the I formation. They're going to run it down your throat. They're going to play rock solid defense, create some turnovers, and they're not going to apologize for it. And they're going to win a lot of football games. They're kind of like the stubborn kid that just won't change their ways, and it works for them. It wins at the FCS level, and when they play Power 5 teams, a lot of Power 5 teams aren't prepared for a power I or I formation, and they just run it down their throat, old school football. They have a stable of backs. They have like 6 guys of 50 yards or more. It's very impressive because they don't have a 100-yard rusher, and yet they're putting up 40, 50 points a game right now. This is a very well-oiled machine that just knows exactly what it needs to do to win football games.
It feels like a clear indication of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Where it's like they just do what they do. And you hear coaches bring this up a lot. Sean Miller on the basketball side for Arizona used to bring this up. And I think Tommy Lloyd's even brought it up at a certain point. He's kind of been part of a program that has done this. But it feels like every coach, and Jedd Fisch, I think, brought it up this week, every coach would love that sweet spot of like you just bring in new faces, but you do the same exact thing and it works. And that's really what North Dakota State is. It's like you just bring in similar faces, but different faces every year or every 4 years or whatever it is, and just do the same types of things, and it continues to work and you continue to win championships. And I think that's one of those comfort areas for coaches where it's like, this is the sweet life. This is what I live for because I don't really have to change my system all that much. We don't have to tweak things all that much. Maybe one guy does one thing a little bit better. Quarterback does things a little bit better than the other one. But for the most part, your schemes are in place. Terminology is probably going to be pretty similar. You don't have to change a whole lot, yet you're continuing to get the results you want to see. And that's, I think, the sweet spot for every coach because it just takes so much of the headache out of the whole process. And so I think every coach probably envies the North Dakota State coaching staff because of their ability to do that. Like you mentioned, the Patriots, where it's just different faces, but you're doing the same things and you're having success. Obviously, you have to get the players there and they have to match up with what your, philosophies are. But, that's an ideal place to be. And for North Dakota State, it's, the things you need to do well, it does well. Maybe it doesn't do everything well. Their passing is not, on par with some other teams. They don't do a whole lot of passing the ball, but if you want, every team likes to run the ball. I mean, even a team like Arizona that wants to pass the ball around consistently talks about the running game. The air raid that Arizona just saw last week with Mississippi State, they never talk about the running game. They never even run the ball, but that was a big part of what they did. And so, they run the ball well. They play good defense. They're good at the line of scrimmage. They don't turn the ball over. All those things are important and key parts of the games that you're going to hear every coach across the country. I'm sure every person that's in our situation covering these teams has heard this week about turnovers and running the ball, winning the line of scrimmage, all those things. They're basic football philosophies and things you want to win. And North Dakota State just does that quite a bit. And so, and does it well. And so I think that's kind of the danger with a team like this is they know what they want to do and they do it well. And that's tough for a team to go up against, especially when it's, still trying to figure out what exactly it is. And that's what Arizona's trying to do. It feels like this season, trying to figure out, okay, what are we? I don't know. It's an interesting game for sure. One that feels like it kind of, the chips are stacked against Arizona. If you win the game, it's kind of like ho-hum, you beat an FCS team. But the chances that you lose are they're not slim. I don't know if they're great, but they're not slim that you're going to, lose this game. This is a very stout opponent, a good opponent. And it'll be very interesting to see what Arizona does when it comes out this weekend. In your mind, for Arizona to pull out a win, what are some of the keys to the game for Arizona and what they need to do well to earn a victory this weekend.
Yeah, they got to run the football. You'll be able to spread it out, I think, against this defense. But at the end of the day, you got to run the football and not be afraid to, and have your line hold. If your line is as bad as it was against Mississippi State, North Dakota State has the players to do some things up there at the line of scrimmage. It's not like the SEC, so you're going to still have opportunities, but they can make the game really sloppy. And I don't think that's the kind of game that Arizona wants to play. Is they don't want to get into a sloppy 15-12 game going into the fourth quarter and let's see what happens, because that's the type of game North Dakota State's going to want you to play. Number two is you can't miss out on opportunities, drop passes, miss interceptions. You just got to take advantage of every opportunity you get in this football game, win 50-50 balls. And lastly is don't outcoach yourself. Kind of similar to North Dakota State, know what you want to do and just do it well. And if the other team changes, oh, well, we're still going to do what we're going to do until you stop us. Don't get too creative. Don't go away out of the box. Just know what you want to do and stick to the game plan.
Yeah, this is one of those games, and we've talked about this during the week, where Pac-12 teams aren't built to go up against this style. They just don't see it very often. Stanford is really the only team that's kind of comparable in the Pac-12, that has maybe a power attack, a power rushing attack that really kind of leans on the kind of those old school ideals of playing football. But Arizona doesn't play them very often. They're not on the schedule this year. They haven't been on the schedule for a while. This team is not built to go up against, a team like that. This team is built to, stop speed teams that want to throw the ball around. That's what the Pac-12 is. You're also playing a team that really has nothing to lose. If North Dakota State comes in and loses, they collect their check, which all these teams that, are lower level that'll be part of it. You're going to get paid either way. And you just go home and you take the experience and you go, that was cool. It was a Power 5 team. We lost them, whatever. We'll go and win another championship, at the FCS level, continue to dominate that level. So you're playing against a team that really has nothing to lose. That's a difficult spot to be in as well. So there's a lot of things that I think are stacked against Arizona in this game, but it will test Arizona and its kind of toughness and some of those things that it's going to need to have the rest of the season. I think this is going to be a really big game for both the offensive and defensive lines. It's going to be their chance to really showcase like, hey, we can do this and we can take on a team that is going to, make sure that we bring out our toughness. And, I think that's a good thing for Arizona moving forward, because they're going to need that as they head, into the rest of the season, into the conference and, Pac-12 plays. So, as you kind of assess this game and pick out some players who are going to be important, who are going to be key players for Arizona's chances in this game, who are a few players you're going to have your eye on and really you feel like, what happens in this game is going to predicate on what they're able to do?
Yeah, number one, let's go with Josh Baker, because I think a lot of the pressure that North Dakota State is going to be able to apply on Arizona is going to be up the middle. And let's face it, last week, Baker had a really bad game against Mississippi State. I think 3 high snaps, 1 went over the head of Jaden DeLora, really threw off the timing of the running game and timing of the plays. This is going to be another difficult game for him. So let's see if he's able to adapt what he did last week and, fix the things that made those mistakes going against North Dakota State, who has a good defensive line as well, and just seeing if he can make those changes. Number 2, I'm going to say Keon Bars. I think he's probably Arizona's most talented defensive player overall. Big guy up front, and North Dakota State's going to run the football right at him. They're going to go up the middle, around the edge. It's not going to be a lot of spread running. It's going to be power formation. And can he get that push up front? Even if it's not a tackle, can he eat up 2-3 blockers and make them kind of block him to open up other guys to get the tackles like Jerry Roberts, Colby Cage? I think that's going to be interesting if he can dominate the line of scrimmage. And lastly, let's talk about T-Mac. I don't know if they have a guy that's guarded a guy like T-Mac. I think this is a big opportunity for him. He's going to get his chances, and this might be his coming out party. I know he had a good game against San Diego State, but this might be that 6 catches, 142 yards, and 2 touchdowns type of game for Tetairoa McMillan. I think he is a physical mismatch for Arizona that they got to exploit.
I was going to ask you for an X factor, and then I had mine planned as going to be T-Mac. So I won't go. I won't go that route because I was going to be mine and you stole it. But I really do think that this is the type of game where he could really have a big impact and do a lot of different things because he is so different from what they're used to seeing. Although, as a Green Bay Packers fan and Green Bay Packers owner, Christian Watson came from North Dakota State, has great speed, size, had some issues catching the ball in the first week. We won't talk about that. But they've had NFL caliber players at that school. So it's not something like they haven't completely seen before, but he's unique and he's a very talented player and one of the best in the country in terms of incoming freshmen. So it'll be interesting to see if he really starts to live up to that a little bit more. He obviously shined in the San Diego State game, but only had a few catches. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how it all plays out. As you look ahead to this game, Troy, and start to look at the predictions, what do you think this is going to shake out to look like?
I think North Dakota State is going to be able to make this a little bit uglier than what Arizona wants. I think Arizona would love to score in the 30-36 range and kind of put this game away early and let their defense win the game in terms of shutting them down. Because I think if they're able to get up by that 14-21 point margin, the game is going to be over. I think it needs to be a close game for North Dakota State. I don't know if it's going to be close all the way through, but I think it will in the beginning. But Arizona wins this game 27-13, 14-point victory. They finally pull away, but I just think too much offense for North Dakota State to handle. And Arizona's gotten better defensively up front, and I think it's a better matchup than what people are going to anticipate.
Our first disagreement of the season. I think the key for Arizona is you make this your game, which is kind of along the lines of your point. You turn this into what Arizona wants to play, which is sometimes up tempo, passing the ball around, spreading the field out, doing some different things to, get them moving. You don't want it to be a groggy type of game. You don't want to be a groggy, muddied game. You want it to be free flowing and you want to score and you want to kind of score quickly. So if you're Arizona, that's the key for sure. I think you want to make this your game. You want to get things going vertical. I just think they're going to have a lot of problems doing that. I don't like the way they played against Mississippi State. I do think they'll play better. I don't think that was a direct impression of who they are as a team. I think they're probably closer to that team we saw against San Diego State, but this is a very good team. And I'm not going to undersell how good they are as even as an FCS team. They're not NAU. It's a lot different than an NAU type of team. Yeah. And even that team gave Arizona struggles last year. So I just, for the first time this season, I'm not going to pick Arizona to win. Maybe that'll be good luck. Who knows? It'll be a reverse jinx, but I don't see it. I don't like the way they played last week. I think North Dakota State has a better chance to impose its style of play on this game. It knows what it does and what it likes to do, and it does it well, like we've been talking about. And I think that holds some weight here. And so I think it is going to be more high scoring than you. I do think both offenses are going to get a decent chance to get going. I don't fully trust Arizona's run defense. I think that's going to give them some issues. So I have this as a 31-27 win for North Dakota State. Probably more high scoring than most people are going to have it, but I think Arizona is going to do its fair share of getting in the end zone and being able to do mostly what it wants. But I think it's going to be a close one. But I'm going Arizona with the loss here, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, not a shock if they go 1-2. I think that was kind of the feeling. If they could clip off one of these teams early in the season, they'd be okay. It's a long road if they don't win this game. If they do win this game, they're in play for a bowl game. I think it'll say a lot about the type of team they are. Maybe the casual fan will be like, hey, that's just a win over an FCS team. But again, I think North Dakota State is much more than that. I think it'll say a lot for, what they have coming up. Obviously you go to Cal, which hasn't played great this season, to open Pac-12 play after this. And so it's a chance to, potentially be 3-1 at that point. So I think it could, determine a lot about the rest of the season. 2-1 looks a lot better than 1-2, but I just don't fully trust Arizona at this point. If they win this game, then we'll maybe, talk about some things different next week. I have Arizona losing this one 31-27. Anything else, Troy? Anything else that we need to talk about this week? Turnover swords.
Turnover swords, that's huge. And also the addition of Tia Savea's brother, and I'm not even going to attempt that name yet. It's, I think, Tremaine.
Yeah, Tremaine.
Savea.
Yeah.
Train. Okay, I got it right. Okay, there we go. From NAU to add depth to the defensive line. So Arizona is using that one roster spot it had left. I'm not sure if he is a scholarship player, but they did add him via transfer from NAU. Kind of reminds me of, remember Mobley back in the Rich Rod era, the defensive lineman? Same body frame, a little bit pudgy right now, but looks like he has some good skill sets that Arizona could use, and it never hurts to have another defensive lineman.
Yeah, it never hurts to have the brother of a player who you are going to rely on quite a bit. It always just gives them that comfort. So a good, not mid-season, but in-season addition for Arizona. And we'll see if he gives them anything. It's a positive. But we appreciate you all listening. We'll be back again. I'm sure we'll get destroyed in the comments for something. But we enjoy when you do comment, good and bad. Always throw us those likes. Make sure you're subscribed. And we'll catch you next week.